Even if you live in the West, you've probably heard of this song. Or this song.
오빤 강남스타일.
But unless you live in these countries in East Asia or understand the language, you've probably never heard of this. That's because what you're listening to is C-pop. And it's dead. There's even a whole video essay about it. In it, it argues that the TikTokification and attempts to copy the K-pop industry has caused detriment to the C-pop scene.
That sayings like C-pop is doomed or C-pop has flopped have been spreading all over Chinese Twitter.
I'll link the video down below. It's a great video.
So it seems to be common consensus now that C-pop is dead.
Or is it? Because to answer, is C-pop dead, you first have to answer, what is C-pop? Seems straightforward because the clue's in the name, but the problem with separating genres with language is we end up taking into the genre everything else that doesn't fit. For instance, you'd rarely see people consider this to be K-pop. Or this. If we take a look at C-pop, we get the exact same problem. Not everything in Chinese is considered C-pop. To make matters more confusing, Chinese pop is split into every dialect that uses Chinese. So when we sing, there's Cantonese pop, Mandarin pop, Hokkien pop, the list goes on. All that's fine because it still doesn't change the fact that it needs to be in a Chinese dialect to be C-pop. But if we want to define the genre, there has to be a better way. Instead of just looking at the music, it's worth considering everything else that surrounds it. Take K-pop for example, you generally have an easier time defining it if you factor in its idol culture. In fact, I'd say it's the key difference between K-pop and other Korean music. That's why one song can get remade twice. And while one is considered K-pop, the other one isn't. It's also interesting to note that these two songs are released within days of each other. Even if we look at J-pop, we get more or less the same analogy. There's a plethora of talented musicians out there making great songs in Japan. But if you were to name a J-pop song off the top of your head right now, there's a good to fair chance that it's an anime theme song. Okay, cool, now we're getting somewhere. Let's try to define C-pop by its global driving force. K-pop has their idols, J-pop has their anime, and we have... I don't know what we have. And that's the first problem. C-pop has great music, but what we lack is a musical vessel like everyone else to influence the world. And you know what sucks? We used to have the biggest one.
Faye Wong, she's the best. I don't know anybody who hasn't seen this movie that hasn't gotten a crush on her.
That's right, 80s and 90s Hong Kong cinema. The films that made everyone think all Chinese people know kung fu, drive stunt cars, and smoke cigarettes and sunglasses. On top of that, they also drummed their theme songs into every head that fell in love with the movies.
전화해서 본인이 이 총 맞았다는 걸 숨기고 마지막으로 통화할 때 나오는 애절한 장국영 씨가 직접 부른 OST입니다. 그래서 이게 국내에서 그 상영이 됐을 때 이 노래가 전국 방방곡곡에 울려 퍼졌던.
Those were the days. Those were the days. Well, shit. One financial crisis, a handover ceremony, and a SARS pandemic later, the Hong Kong film industry disappeared from the global spotlight in under a decade, along with its iconic theme songs. But that can't be it. That's just Hong Kong. C-pop is made in China, Taiwan, Malaysia, Singapore, and everywhere that uses its dialects. It must be something else. Let's listen to more theme songs. Notice a pattern? No? Let's keep going. Still nothing? Let me give you a hint. They are all ballads. Now, I know what you must be saying. Ballads are a very common choice for movie theme songs, even in the West. And you're right. But over here, this shit spreads way beyond the movie theaters. If we flash back to this video where it all started, this screenshot of the top 10 charts on QQ Music where the commentator used to point out how old the songs are.
Something really strange lies here. 7 out of these 10 songs were released 10 years ago.
Oh yeah? That's strange? You know what's more strange? You know what's even more fucked up in this screenshot? 9 out of these 10 songs are ballads. Make no mistake, you are looking at one of the most ballad-heavy music ecosystems in the world. Now, to the outsider, it might sound weird that our charts are topped by depressing breakup songs, but for some reason we love it. We love singing them in karaoke's and birthday parties, even in weddings, which is kind of fucked up, but whatever. But the popularity of ballads in C-pop is not without its reasons. The main one is because Chinese dialects are spoken with tones, a mechanic that's neither present in Korean, Japanese, nor English. Some Chinese dialects like Cantonese have up to 9 tones, so our language family already has musicality built into it. In tonal languages, words must be intonated the right way in relation with other words to preserve its meaning. And so songwriters and composers in C-pop have to work extra hard to create melodies and lyrics that marry each other flawlessly. For instance, here's a line of a very popular Cantonese pop song without its melody. Min min tao sung fei fa. So if I have to find a tune that fits this line, what can I do? Well, let's start with the easy part. The first 2 words are identical, min min. This is because in Chinese dialects, it's very common to double up a word to strengthen its meaning. For example, tin means day, and tin tin means every day. Teng means listen, and teng teng means listen carefully. So you would think if tong means pain, then tong tong means it really hurts. But instead it's used like this.
人家痛痛，
哪里痛痛？
哪里都痛痛。
老闆嚟喎，你真係。
I fucking love this language. Anyway, as you can imagine, in Cantopop, it's very common for double words to have either identical or similar notes in music to avoid confusion. So in our case, we can just do this. The second part, tao sheng, actually starts with identical tone as the 2 words before. But because in context, this is a separate phrase, we can get away by not mapping it to the same notes. That being said, it still requires a rising tone to preserve its meaning, like this. The last part is actually a little tricky, because the words fei, fa are actually in the highest tone bracket in Cantonese, meaning once you've said the word fei, you can't follow it up with any other word that goes higher. It won't mean anything. So in music, having an ascending interval for these 2 words might cause confusion. But there's a catch. For one, unlike the first example, these aren't identical words, so a slight deviation won't hurt. Also, context matters. This is actually a very common phrase in poetry, so it's less likely to be misheard. And lastly, there's nothing to be misheard for. The word fa is actually one of the only 2 tones that exist for this particular syllable, meaning you can only say the word fa in 2 ways. The only other way that makes sense, fa, doesn't make any sense when combined with the first word. Because of that, you can actually take quite a bit of musical liberty for these 2 words, like this. And now, with all these considerations put together, we've finally turned this line, min min tao sheng fei fa, into music. And this laborious process that's unique to C-pop results in some of the most sophisticated music there is in the world. Even world-class singers have trouble keeping up.
이 노래 정말 어려워요. 멜로디가 쭉 이어지는 느낌이 아니고 이렇게 왔다 갔다 되게 아름답게 움직이거든요. 이렇게
If I take this last part of the line and just say it as is, you can almost hear the melody of the final song. 乾一罐的汽水
一罐的汽水
呼出泡影聽着那共鳴聲
呼出泡影聽着那共鳴聲
If this sounds like a songwriter's nightmare to you, keep in mind that this level of tone-melody correspondence is far more stringent in Cantonese than in Mandarin. This is a 2023 study done by a professor for spoken language processing in the University of Munich. In their test, they selected 9 pairs of C-pop songs which have both Mandarin and Cantonese versions and compared their lyrics to see how well the natural tones of both dialects map onto the same melody. The result? Cantonese versions were consistently more tone sensitive than their Mandarin counterparts, with 77% of the lyrics matching the melody, while the Mandarin versions only matched 38%. That being said, the songs used for these tests are all over 10 years old. Some are even pushing 20 years old. Since then, we've become much more accustomed to songwriters taking liberty by going off tone. But the one big takeaway remains undisputed. Chinese dialects are perfect for ballads. All this sounds great, but what if a gift from the tones that the ballad gods have given us is now actively fighting against the songwriters in just about every other genre? Just think about how hard it is to write a Cantonese EDM, for example. The point of EDM is that the melody is supposed to be simple and catchy, like this. But if this chorus was in Cantonese, you'd have to find 5 words in either identical or at least similar tones to put them there. They have to make sense, they have to rhyme a second time, and they have to be about pasta, which isn't that nuance of an idea in the first place. But even the word pasta are in 2 different tones, so you're fucked from the get-go. That being said, it doesn't mean we don't have catchy dance music, it just means we have to work around it. For example, what if you have to write a song for a Canto pop idol? Well, one thing you can do is to start the song in Cantonese and then switch to English for the chorus. Another way to do it is to not have lyrics for the chorus at all. Hip-hop is another great example. In English, for instance, hip-hop artists are known to use tones to create rhythm and emphases on certain words in the lyrics. Like this. What you're listening to specifically is something called the phrase final declination. It refers to a phenomenon in speech where the pitch of a voice drops significantly as it reaches the end of a sentence. If English is your first language, you probably do this a lot without even thinking about it. Unsurprisingly, this technique has become a large part of rap music.
His palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. There's vomit on his sweater already. Mom's spaghetti, he's nervous.
But when hip-hop got introduced into Chinese music, things got complicated. Let's look at Mandarin. As mentioned before, for a sentence to achieve phrase final declination, you have to pitch down at the end of a line. But in all 4 tones of Mandarin, only the 4th and the occasional neutral tone can achieve a low intonation at the end of a syllable. Ma, 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 ma. Not only that, the 4th tone's pitch doesn't stay constant. It's what we refer to as a contour tone, where the voice has to pitch up and down within a single syllable. Ma. And because unlike Cantonese, where there are multiple tones that stay relatively low and flat, Mandarin hip-hop relies heavily on its 4th tone to achieve phrase final declination. As you can imagine, not having the whole vocabulary available becomes limiting for the songwriters. So if you want to write a Mandarin hip-hop song, what can you do? Well, like in Canto pop, one thing you can do is to just substitute the line-ending syllables with English. Granted that a good portion of the reason is to cater to an international audience, according to a 2023 study published by the Journal of New Music Research, out of a sample size of 34 modern Mandarin trap-style rap music, English words account for 32% of all line-ending syllables. It's an elegant solution. But what if you don't want English lyrics, you don't want to work with tonal constraints, and yet you still want to make catchy Chinese music? Well, your only other option is to be this guy.
大家说唱看多了，你可能会受到影响，你会觉得好像我这一句后面要加点英文，好像比较洋派一点，对，但是没有必要。我是把歌声当成一个乐器，我不是在着重于咬字。有一些歌当然会比较清楚，有些歌我觉得就是模糊的唱就对了。
周杰伦真的是红遍全亚洲，但是我儿子跟我女儿到今天《龙卷风》都没听明白歌词。
Don't try to understand it. Feel it.
杰伦创造了另外一个时代了，他不用咬字清晰，他表達出他想要表達的音樂態度。
周杰倫咬字唔清楚，大家唔會介意，係因為佢音樂做得太好。
You know what? At this point, I'm convinced that even he doesn't know what the fuck he's singing about. Now, you may be asking, if Jay Chou was able to sing past all of the tonal obstacles by simply mumbling and slurring through lyrics, why can't everybody do it? And the answer is simple.
因為全世界淨係得一個周杰倫就冇啦。
So, if we take a step back, we start to see the full picture. Why is it hard to make Chinese music? Well, because Chinese is music. And considering where the trend is taking us, the linguistic structure of Chinese dialects makes it hard for songwriters and composers to produce music that's simple and catchy, an important ingredient for worldwide success on the international stage. And that's understandable. Pop songs, by definition, are popular songs. And it's hard to imagine an international audience going to a music festival like Coachella, expecting to have a good time, and then play them a sad ballad. But does that mean it's dead? Not really. Because international success doesn't matter. Popularity has never been an indication of quality. The fact that C-pop is failing to copy K-pop is a good thing, because we already have K-pop. But it also doesn't mean C-pop can't evolve. Indie rock, hip-hop, and R&B artists are pushing the boundaries every single day. It's just going to take more trial and error to traverse our beautifully complex language. Maybe C-pop will one day get the spotlight on the international stage, be it in its current form or an amalgamation of what's coming next. But if it doesn't, so what? It just means it's not for everyone. It's for us. 其實咧，我一直都好想做啲同華語電影或者華語音樂有關嘅題材。咁好可惜，因為呢條 channel 一直都係以英文運行啦，一直都未揾到機會。咁希望可以藉住呢條片吸納多啲華人觀眾。咁如果你中意睇呢條片嘅話，歡迎訂閱。我哋下次再見。